welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Steph. I can't believe that it is 2024 already. I'm not sure when or how that happened, but this year is gonna bring some pretty big changes for me, so I thought that it would be really nice to just have kind of a more chill, chatty video about some of those and how that is going to affect my reading goals. So if you've been here before, you probably see that I have a new background. That's because we moved to Australia. Because up until now, I was a Canadian expat living in Singapore. Basically, at the end of last year, my husband got a job offer that was really good. So we're here just for 12 months, and so I quit my job and we're in Australia. We're here now. So in the next few months, I'm really excited to kind of explore the country a little bit, explore a little bit more of Australian literature, and of course, Australian bookstores. Now that we're here, I'm gonna have a lot more time to read, which kind of brings me to some of my reading goals for this year. Look at that segue. So the first thing I want to talk about is my Goodreads challenge. Last year I set it to 120, and I ended up reading 153 books. But I actually don't think that I want to read so many books this year. Reading is my main source of entertainment. I don't really watch a whole lot of TV, and I really read a lot for escapism, and I did last year especially. And I still want to do that because I feel like it is a really important part of just my mental health, having that fun time, the rest time. But I also really want to take the opportunity this year to read some of the books that maybe I have been putting off because they're a little bit more dense. But I'm also hoping that I'm going to have a little bit more mental space to be more critical about the books that I'm reading. I want to be more engaged with what I'm reading. Rather than just taking it in and letting it wash over me and just going to the next. So I don't know what that is going to completely look like for me, but I'm really interested in also the craft of writing, and I feel like becoming a more critical reader will help me also become more of a better writer, which is not something that I talk a whole lot about on this channel, but I am considering maybe incorporating a few videos here and there about it. So all of that is to say is that this year I'm setting my Goodreads goal to 90 books. I think that's still a really high number for most people, and I shouldn't have a problem probably going past that, but I don't want to have the pressure of reading to fulfill this like kind of arbitrary number that I set for myself. I would rather be able to, first of all, read books that I really enjoy, but also to be able to take the time to be articulate about what works for me in that book and what doesn't work for me in that book and why that is. Which kind of leads me to my qualitative goals. While I'm talking about some of my qualitative goals, I'll mention like a few books that have caught my eye for illustrative purposes, but it's not by any means like a hard set TBR. They're totally subject to change. So since joining BookTube last year, I noticed that I really got a lot more into different genres, particularly horror, and I absolutely love that. Gothic has always been one of my favorite genres, but for me it is kind of a gateway into other subgenres that I'm really interested in exploring. And I'm interested in pushing my comfort zone in horror a little bit more. I already tend to read a lot of paranormal, folk horror, supernatural stuff, and we'll continue to read that, but I'm also really keen on trying maybe found footage and things that also incorporate a bit more of a multimedia experience, where you read a book and it's like, here is a news excerpt, or this is a transcript from an interview. Podcasts, whatever, that also help unveil the story in like a different dimension. I think it can add a lot of suspense, and I'm really interested in checking out some of those. So one of these books that I've kind of selected that seems like a nice kind of bridge into it is The Supernatural Enhancements by Edward Antero. And this, I believe, is told partially, at least, through found footage and diary entries. And I just really love the cover. It has me very intrigued. So I'm looking to check that one out. And the other one is Night Film. I have heard very, very mixed things about this book, and I'm not sure. I feel like people either really like it and it works super well for them, or they just don't like it, or they find it boring or weird and just not it. But it has been on my radar for quite some time, and I'm really keen on just giving it a shot. The other kind of subgenre of horror that I'm really interested in checking out is space horror. I'm thinking like more sci-fi horror, I think, than cosmic horror, like Dead Silence versus Call of Cthulhu, or I don't know. I've never really read cosmic horror. I'm open to trying it, but I just think that I would find something that is like a little bit more realistic leaning to be more frightening and to build more tension for me. So if you have suggestions in this sort of genre, I'm very interested in hearing it. But right now I've heard really good things about The Luminous Dead and Annihilation, which I think is a bit more sci-fi leaning. So I'm definitely gonna check some of those out. I'm also really keen on trying more fantasy books and definitely like leaning towards the darker side of fantasy lately. I have a number of more political leaning fantasy books that I'm really keen on trying, but just felt like maybe they would be too dense for me to actually engage with last year when I was working a full-time job and like balancing my other hobbies. One is The Library of Mount Char. This is a darker leaning horror, dark fantasy book. I know nothing about it, but I'm really intrigued by it and I've heard really, really good things. So I'm hoping to actually read that maybe later this month. And the other one is The Trader by Rue Cormorant. This has me super intrigued. Again, I don't know a ton about it and I'm not gonna read a ton about it before I get in, but I just downloaded it and from what I understand, it might be a corruption arc. It's a very dark political leaning book that is exploring how commerce and things like accounting can be a tool of control for empire. And of course, my final genre related goal this year is that I would really like to incorporate a little bit more nonfiction. I started off last year really strong with the nonfiction, and then as I got more and more stressed out, I had less sort of cognitive capacity to engage with nonfiction material. So I really love to read like medical and health related books, like history of science and medicine, memoirs or biographies related to sort of that realm. Last year I absolutely loved The Facemaker, which was about the history of plastic surgery in World War I and II. A few books that I'm really keen on checking out is Unwell Women. This has been on my TBR for like a year plus. And I actually have a physical copy somewhere. I'm also interested in Madame Restel, The Life and Death and Resurrection of Old New York's most fabulous, fearless, and infamous abortionist. Sounds very interesting. And also Blood, the Science, Medicine, and Mythology of Menstruation. Interesting. I haven't read anything else from that author, but I know that she is a pretty well-respected gynecologist in Canada. So very intrigued by that. And I'm also quite keen on reading more memoirs and more classic leaning nonfiction. One is Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke. This just sounds really interesting and up my alley, and I believe that there is also Australia connection to it, so that's a nice short one that I'll throw in too. And finally, my last qualitative leaning goal for 2024 is that I really want to read more books that are self-published and indie published. I feel like indie tends to get a bit of a bad rap for being like really poorly written, poorly edited, and just kind of rip-offs of more popular books. But I do feel like there might be some real gems in there as well. Like I read The Serpent and Wings of Night last, which is a bit more of a fantasy romance book, but it ended up being one of the biggest surprises of the year. So I'm really interested in seeing what is there. Also because I find it very interesting how indie publishing and self-publishing in particular can be a little bit more reactionary to things that are going on in pop culture versus traditional publishing where, you know, the turnover is like many years, so it actually takes us a while to get there. So I'm curious to see what that looks like and if you're able to actually see writers being more experimental and more responsive to current events and issues and taking risks that maybe traditional publishers don't feel comfortable taking. So I don't know what I'll end up discovering there, but I'm really keen on finding out. Two of the books that are sort of on my radar is Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. This I think is a little bit more fantasy leaning than romance, and I've heard that it's pretty epic and very exciting, so I'm quite interested in that one. And then the other one I think is like a thriller horror, and that is I Can See Your Lies by Izzy Lee. I know nothing really about this, but the cover is absolutely stunning. I am just definitely going to be checking that one out. So that's all that I've got for this video, and I am just really excited for this year. I'm really excited for books that are coming out and just some of the changes and opportunities that maybe it might have for me. So if you made it to this point in the video, thanks so much for watching, and I would love to hear about some of your goals, how the beginning of your year is shaping up, and yeah, I'll catch you next week in another video. Thanks for watching. Bye.